The developers of our very first champion, Criticom, went on to perform a hat trick of sorts with what GameCritics.com affectionately called the Trilogy of Terror. Now, while I think the N64's Dark Rift is a bit undeserving of that inclusion, it's not unplayably bad. It's better than Criticom, it's fine.
Get on! Get on!
I don't have a ton of experience with the conclusion to their epic saga, Cardinal Sin. This has been a constant request from all of you out there, and just taking a quick peek at it, you can see that it combined the robust fighting game acumen Kronos Digital Entertainment was known for, and being a pretty overt ripoff of D&D's characters, world, and setting. By that logic then, comboing these two things together should then easily dethrone Warriors of Baldur, but we won't know for sure until we get it in the ring. To be a bit more fair to Criticom, Kronos were forced to speed through its development in just 6 months, when the licensed IP they're originally working on got suddenly snatched away from them. God, I'd love to find out what that IP was. There was also pressure to get it out the door in time for the PlayStation launch, and even though it was terrible, it sold reasonably well, at least well enough to convince their publisher, Vic Tokai, to allow them to develop a follow-up. Dark Rift, while not the exact same universe, I think, nevertheless retained a lot of the tropes and even characters from Criticom. Somewhat coincidentally, shortly after Dark Rift's release, Vic Tokai completely exited the video game industry and focused on what they were good at, which was producing optical cables. This left Kronos holding the bag, but fortunately being located so close to Sony's 989 studios, they quickly inked a deal to release yet another fighting game, and realizing that their whole sci-fi universe wasn't getting over with anybody, decided to pivot onto dark fantasy. Stanley Liu, Kronos' founder, who sadly passed away a number of years ago, said to GameCritics.com back in 2001 that the Trilogy of Terror was in actuality a way to keep their heads above water. We got stuck doing fighting games for a while simply because we were one of the very few US game developers that actually made a fighting game, hence Dark Rift and Cardinal Sin. Looking back, we did what we had to in order to survive and grow as a company. In many ways, without those titles, we would not have the chance to build up our technology and capability to create Fear Effect. Yes, for those that may not remember, after completing their sentence in the bad fighting game Mines, they went on to develop the Fear Effect series, which predictably got mishandled so badly by Square in the subsequent years after Kronos closed their doors, it's probably worthy of a What Happened video, hosted by that lame game show guy. Anyway, as it turns out, Cardinal Sin was largely inspired by Namco's Soul Blade/Edge, and you can see a little bit of that in a few of its mechanics. This was also the first game that Kronos employed full motion capture on, and it sure looks like it. Several staff members separated each fighter of the cast into 3 groups: smaller and speedy, middle of the road, and then the big girthy honkers. The Kronos staff themselves then performed the actions for most of these characters, but they also employed a professional sword fighter to capture the more complicated melee moves. In a post-mortem you can find over on the PlayStation Museum, linked in the description below, the team broke down what went wrong with Cardinal Sin, which included the stiff animation that they weren't ever able to nail down, its clunky controls, and the finicky counter system. They did, however, feel they crushed it when it came to character design and world building, which, I'll be the judge of, in a little segment which I like to call crushed it when it came to the character design and world building here. I just gotta be honest. Now, the intro is over the top and also all over the place. There were a bunch of warring clans in the Bloodland world, I think. orcs, knights, zombies, sexy witches, sexy lizard men, sexy etceteras. But all their fighting and a fussin' was put to an end by some old guy called the Outsider, or the Wanderer, who I guess just wanders. He was like, yo, let's just chill and move forward positively, and then produced a magic MacGuffin which split into smaller MacGuffins and given to each clan, whereupon everyone was like, cool. And then the old guy was like, okay, I'm out, peace. And everyone instantly started their beefs once again the moment he vanished. Then, some indeterminate time later, during a massive battle between all the gangs, another mysterious sorcerer, or Res, appeared out of nowhere named Sin, who is then all like, give me all your MacGuffins and I'm gonna organize a tournament and whoever beats me gets it all. And nobody was ever able to get it all, because Sin is 100% that bitch. Hence, Cardinal Sin. Now, the menus are pretty cool. Lots of scrolls, lots of fire, and they're all rendered way better than what we saw in Ravenloft. The select screen is a bit confusing at first, but guess what? The cast is actually pretty dope. We have Orion, Plague, Nefra, Vanguard, Finster, Mongoro, Mcre, and Heckler. But 8 characters is not really acceptable in 1998, but fortunately there's 8 more to unlock when you beat them as a mid-boss in each of the core cast's arcade ladder. These are Juny, Redemptor, Stygian, Khan, Molok by Morphia, Voodoo, and Mongan. And on top of that, there's the bosses, which are accessed via cheat codes. These, of course, include the eponymous Sin and her skeleton-based bra, Hachi Machi! And finally, Kron, a huge virile dragon who walks like this. Hachi Machi! All in all, that's 18 characters, which is a pretty meaningful amount of content. Not all of the designs are winners, but like, most of them are. Nefra, Vanguard, Redemptor, Stygian, Plague, Molok, and both bosses are some standouts for me, and the stages are all appropriately themed to them as well, taking place across the Bloodlands via this neat little map. The music isn't much home to write about, and outside the opening intro and the announcer, which really reminds me of
Tournament of Legends! Begin!
There's a weird lack of voice samples for the entire cast. This also extends to the most important facet to any fighting game, the endings, which are composed of some pretty decent CGI clips that strangely all lack voiceovers too, and even text, so you kinda have to intuit what's going on in them, and for a good chunk, it really isn't clear what's going on. Each character also gets an opening cutscene, but they lack context as well, so while it's nice that they're included, they remain somewhat obscure. I also have to say, in general, this isn't a bad-looking game at all. I mean, it's no Soul Blade or Virtua Fighter 2, but it's a quantum leap over Kronos' previous efforts, from the effects of the magical attacks to the spurts of blood, even down to the detail of the character models themselves. It's all surprisingly impressive. With all that said, though, do you know what's a little less impressive than that?